Okay, think of the most obscure writer you can think of, then think again, and you'll be halfway to Flannery O'Connor. Now, apparently some people have heard of her. I certainly hadn't, until I'd heard of Brad Dourif. Now, there's an obscure actor if I ever knew one. And then there's some really noisy people outside the window who insist on interrupting probably the best book review ever. And they continue on and on and on in their loud, garbling voices until I want to stab them with my compasses. However, I won't. I'll just kill them slowly, later. It's called Wise Blood, and it's by Flannery, you see. And she's a writer from the 1950s, and she wrote this in the 1950s. And it basically revolves around 4 characters, with one kind of main character. And I've drawn some visual aids because obviously reviewing books on a video, the 2 mediums don't really gel well together without small stick drawings, which I actually happen to have. Now here they are, our characters. The one on the end is Hazel Motes. He's a happy-looking fellow. And then there's Enoch Emery, Isa Hawks, and Sabbath Hawks. Now Isa's her dad, Sabbath is his daughter, and he is a preacher. He's a real preacher, but young Hazel here keeps getting mistaken for a preacher, which is unfortunate, to say the least, because he hates preachers, and he goes on and on and on about how much he hates preachers, and he was brought up with a preaching background, but he really hates preachers, and he hates Jesus Christ, which is kind of what the whole book is about, really. With that in mind, what do you think he's likely to do? Well, he's likely to attack this preacher, of course. Well, no, he doesn't. He becomes a preacher. Well, that makes perfect sense, but as you'll soon come to discover, Flannery O'Connor and making sense don't tend to go well together. He's come back from the war, and he goes to the nearest city after going home and finding out that everyone's dead, and the only thing left is a piece of furniture known as a chifforobe, which he's very protective of. He leaves a threatening note on it. This chifforobe belongs to Hazel Motes. Do not steal it, or you'll be hunted down and killed. So he's quite protective of that. He's pretty angry about Jesus Christ, because he doesn't think Jesus Christ existed, or Jesus Christ didn't die to save his soul or anything. So when he sees Isa and Sabbath going around trying to sell leaflets and their religion, he gets pretty angry. But obviously, being socially awkward and a character of Flannery O'Connor's creation, he can't do a logical thing to just say, hello, I have a problem with you, we need to sort this out violently or non-violently, depending on which is his favourite. So, luckily he meets them next to a potato peeler store, so he buys a potato peeler and uses this as an excuse to follow them because he wants to give Sabbath the potato peeler. So that's the beginning of it, really. It's the 3 of them and Enoch rambling as usual in the background, which is all he does for the entire book. He basically has no point. And the potato peeler. And this enables Flannery O'Connor to set up the first confusing conversation of the book. Hazel trying to give her the potato peeler. I don't want that thing, she said. What do you think I want with that thing? Take it. It ain't mine. I don't want it. You take it, the blind man said. You put it in your sack and shut up before I hit you. Hazel thrust the peeler at her again. So we can see here how the reactions of the characters are completely at odds with the stimuli which cause them. Like, they're so angry over this potato peeler when really it's just like an object. And if they're so religious anyway, then they shouldn't be giving so much worth to the object, which I find ridiculous. And also, if someone's giving you a gift, you accept it. I mean, it'd be an asset to have, especially in the hard economic times of the 1950s in the southern states of America. We all know what that was like. So now, if she does accept it, she'll always associate the peeler with bad vibes, because her dad threatened physical violence when the potato peeler was offered to her. But she doesn't take it in the end, so Hazel gets to keep it, so he wins there. Now on to Enoch Emery. Now Enoch is this random guy who doesn't seem to have any connection with preaching or religion at all. He just likes Hazel. Hazel hates him, because Hazel hates everybody, because Hazel's a grumpy little bastard. You see Enoch there. Now Enoch is basically the reason for the name of the novel Wise Blood, because he has wise blood. which tells him stuff. Now, back to not making sense. The things that his wise blood tells him to do include, in no particular order, going to the cinema, drinking milkshake, taking Hazel to a museum, dressing up as someone in a fake beard and blacking up to go and steal a small shrunken man, which is another important character, as you can see, from a museum, and then giving it to Hazel as a replacement for Jesus, or the new Jesus, as he calls it. And then the illogical progression of events continues when Enoch is rewarded for his listening to the ramblings of his wise blood by having the chance to beat up a man who dresses up as a gorilla called Gonga and getting his gorilla costume and then wearing it. And that's the reason he's got that sort of hairy jumpsuit on there, is because that's what makes him happy. And as you can see, he's the only one who achieves happiness. So maybe the point of this book is to say that any kind of belief system other than one that's really kind of instinctive, like your blood, just leads to unhappiness and unfulfillment. Whereas if you just listen to your conscience, like your purest conscience, you end up happy and dressed as a gorilla. So, if it was up to me, I'd reject both Hazel's views and Isa and Sabbath's views. Now, there's nothing really that exciting in the book, to be honest. I mean, there's no particularly large events, there's just lots of small events that have no bearing on anything else. And like, there doesn't seem to be like an overarching point to the book, or like a point she's trying to make about religion. Maybe that point I just made is the point, but I had to scrape the bottom of the barrel for that one. But there was an interesting bit when Hazel runs somebody over, so I might read that bit out. So basically, the context of this killing is that Hazel was preaching his new church, which is the church without Christ, because he hates Jesus. And then this guy tries to take advantage of him, so Hazel just tells him to sod off, basically, and leaves. And then this guy who's taking advantage of him makes like Hazel a twin, and Hazel gets really annoyed about this. Not because like the guy's making money out of his idea, but because the twin clearly does believe in Jesus, and he's annoyed about that. So he gets the man and he follows him home, and Hazel asks him, "What do you do it for?" "That's what I ask you." And the man goes, "A man has to look after himself." "You ain't true," Hazel says. "You believe in Jesus. What's it to you? What you knocked my car off the road for?" "Take off that hat and suit," Hazel says. "Listen here, I ain't trying to mock you. I bought this here suit. I throw my other one away." So, Hazel reaches out angrily and brushes the hat off, so that's really the turning point. The man just can't stand it anymore and begins to run away. So Hazel screams after him, "You will get undressed," basically. And so the man's running away, getting undressed, and then Hazel drives the car into him, and he goes, "He began grabbing for his feet as if he would take off his shoes too, but before he could get to them, the Essex, which is the car, I've never heard of it though, knocked him flat and ran over him. Hayes drove about 20 feet and stopped the car and began to back it. He backed it over the body and then stopped and got out. The Essex stood half over the other Prophet, as if it were pleased to guard what it had finally brought down. A man didn't look so much like Hayes, lying on the ground on his face without his hat or suit on. A lot of blood was coming out of him and forming a puddle around his head." So, and then Hazel begins to talk to the sort of dying man. He goes, "There's two things I can't stand. A man that ain't true and one that mocks what is." So he's annoyed that he's copying him, but he doesn't really seem to care about the money that he's lost, or could have made. Then Hazel says something that actually kind of makes sense, like for the first time in the novel, because none of the speech ever makes sense. And he goes, "You shut up now," Hazel says. "Jesus, you shut up like I told you now." So he's able to communicate with a guy, telling him what he wants and what he requires. And the man dies after Hazel punches him in the face. The end. Well, obviously, there's more to it. Look at all those things. There's loads more to it. But all those things are basically in the same vein as that. I mean, Hazel dies at the end after blinding himself. The landlady gets to keep his body because the police didn't notice that he died. But it's all basically the same, just things that seem like they should be important, but there's no grand overarching thing to bring them all together to make them important. So yeah, first review over and done with. There will be better ones because I'll have better material to deal with, basically. And I thought I'd mark books saying not like out of 5 stars or whatever, but whether I would read them again or not, and how many times I do that. So I probably wouldn't read this again. Although if I didn't have any other books around at the time, and this was the only book, I would read it. But I'm not too fussed, to be honest. So that would probably translate to a half a star out of 10. Out of 10? Yeah. 0.5 out of 10. Pretty shit literature.